Let us hear the welcome remarks from the current President of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. Let us welcome Dr. Albert Hironela.
Wishing a pleasant day to one and all. It is my great pleasure to welcome everyone on the occasion of the first ever virtual annual convention of the Philippine Society of Anatomists with the theme Teaching Anatomy During These Extraordinary Times. Anatomy is considered the basis of medical sciences. COVID-19 pandemic has colossal effects on the study of anatomy, both on the educators and the students. Cadaver dissection, which has been the principal way of learning since the 17th century, is invaluable for the following reasons. Aside from being acquainted with human morphology, it also develops artfulness, teamwork, as well as interpersonal and communication skills among our medical students. As early as 2003, computer-based learning and other virtual techniques have been incorporated to our standard face-to-face classroom activities. But now, we are left with only one choice, and that is virtual form of education, more popularly known in our country as distant learning. The objective of today's gathering is to revisit different methods of electronic learning with the ultimate purpose of finding a way to teach anatomy in the most appropriate and acceptable way, both on the side of the professors, the students, and the institution as well. Pursuant to such an objective, we are fortunate today to have with us renowned speakers in the person of Dr. Nemuel Pahutagana, Dr. Michael Joseph Dino, Dr. Marisa Fernandez, who will be formally introduced later. The highlight of today's event is a tribute to the founder and first president of the Philippine Society of Anatomists, our first Dr. Domingo Ampil Memorial Lecture. Distinctly, we are all excited to hear our speakers, but let me take this opportunity to express my deepest gratitude to the following. Our host, Our Lady of Fatima University, the unwavering support of our department head, Dr. Luz Biminda Surio, our college dean, Dr. Reynaldo Olaso, and our university president, Dr. Caroline Enriquez. Also to the technical group, which is headed by Dr. Michael Joseph Dino, to the organizing committee, ably chaired by Dr. Chona Araga, to our dear sponsors, and of course, to the men and women of the Philippine Society of Anatomists. My sincere salute to all of you. And for now, for the splendor of our association, again, the Philippine Society of Anatomists welcomes everyone, and may the Almighty God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hironela. So we actually have a poll for our new members, for the members and fellow of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated, to please visit the link to vote. No, but the students need not vote anymore. Only the members of the PSAi and the new members. Okay, so going back, let us now hear some message from one of the founding members of the Philippine Society of Anatomists, the 8th president of the PSA, 1989 to 1990, and is currently the chair of the Department of Anatomy of Our Lady of Fatima University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Luz Biminda Surio.
Good morning, everyone. To our dear presidents of Our Lady of Fatima University, Dr. Caroline Enriquez, our Dean, Fatima College of Medicine, Dr. Reynaldo Olaso, our President, Philippine Society of Anatomists, Dr. Albert Ornelia, and most especially to our fellow anatomists from the various medical and allied medical schools all over the country. Today, we hold the first virtual convention of our society, and I cannot help but recall the time it was created way back December 1981 in Dasmariñas, Cavite, on the grounds of Emilio Aguinaldo College of Medicine. And it has objectives of improving, innovating, and standardizing the teaching of anatomy all over the country. It has also objective of promoting camaraderie among its members. The founder and the first president of the Philippine Society of Anatomists was Dr. Domingo Ampil, and he was also the first chair of the Department of Anatomy, Fatima College of Medicine. It is interesting to note that even if there are just a few remaining living founding members of the society, there are still 3 of us in Fatima College of Medicine who are actively teaching anatomy up to the present. And the first one is Dr. Pete Ampil, the son of Dr. Domingo Ampil, and he's in microanatomy. The second one is Dr. Flor de Jesus, and she is the current chair of the Department of Anatomy, CEU College of Medicine. So we are all here now under the leadership of Dr. Albert Ornelia to make innovations in the teaching of anatomy during these times of pandemic crisis, and that is teaching of virtual anatomy. So we'll be sitting back and listening intently to our distinguished speakers and learn some principles and guidelines in the teaching of virtual anatomy, and hopefully adopt these in the different departments of anatomy in your respective schools. So on behalf of the staff of the Department of Anatomy, Fatima College of Medicine, welcome to our first virtual convention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Surio. Let us call the Dean of Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine, Dr. Reynaldo Olaso.
Good morning. In behalf of the Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine, I would like to welcome the officers and participants of the Philippine Society of Anatomists in your convention. It is a privilege that the Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine is the host for this virtual convention of yours. At the onset, what I'd like to state is that I have always admired physicians who have embraced the art of teaching, because we all know that physician is the noblest of profession. And at the same time, we are also aware that the teacher is equally a noble profession. Therefore, physicians in the academe and have decided to embrace the art of teaching, hence the 2 noble professions, that of a physician and that of a teacher. I also would like to commend and salute the people who have embraced the science of anatomy and decided to teach anatomy. Why did I say this? Embracing the teaching of this, utilizing cadavers, dead body, and representative of the dead is really something to behold. The Department of Anatomy in my university is really known for its very innovative way of teaching. Especially now, they have transformed the art of teaching anatomy into a different level. They have produced videos and different teaching materials, which, if you try to look, are actually world-class. They are world-class, and people would think that they were made by professional producers. I am sure that the anatomists in the other College of Medicine have done the same. I really admire all of you. Having said this, I'd like to thank you for having chosen Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine as your host. And again, good morning and thank you.
Distinguished PSA guests, help me welcome the president of the Fatima Medical Science Foundation, Incorporated, who is recognized as one of the 100 most influential Filipino women in the world, Dr. Caroline Marian Enriquez.
Good morning, everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to be with the Philippine Society of Anatomists on their first virtual annual convention. Please allow me to give my thanks and congratulations to President Albert Heronilia and Vice President Chona Araga for the invitation. I could not say no to my hardworking and devoted faculty members. I am honored to be here, and I am likewise thankful to be with you and thrilled as well, especially now during these COVID times when the limits of our teaching anatomy is tested online. As a core and fundamental subject in medicine, the onus is on the faculty members, the anatomists, to create and find innovative ways of teaching anatomy digitally. In the 8 months that we have been on lockdown, it has been very challenging to teach anatomy, and I have seen how my faculty in Our Lady of Fatima College of Medicine create several videos and modules in anatomy and other medical subjects. As a whole, I congratulate all the anatomists for finding ways to deliver the art of teaching anatomy through the digital divide. We are still in the midst of the COVID crisis. We do not know how and when it will end, but with determination and commitment, we have found ways to teach medicine in creative and interesting ways. Today, I salute all the members of the Philippine Society of Anatomists for playing a crucial role in the transformation of education. Training and teaching our medical students is not a one-off segmental event. It is all about teaching our students to connect the dots seamlessly so our students can visualize the healing process from the anatomy of the body, the physiological functions of the parts, to the biochemical undertones intracellularly. As we navigate these turbulent times, my sincerest congratulations to all the members and faculty members of the Philippine Society of Anatomists, most especially its officers. My gratitude to all of you for remaining steadfast to our calling as doctors and teachers. As Brad Herney once said, a good teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat and mabuhay kayong lahat. Thank you.
We will proceed with the program proper with the theme Teaching Anatomy in These Extraordinary Times, hosted by the current Secretary of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated, Dr. Virginia Paz Braga, and co-hosted by the Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine and the Research, Development, and Innovation Center.
Greetings to our honored guests and speakers, to the Philippine Board of Anatomy, the Advisory Council and Executive Committees, the 2020 PSAi Executive Council, our dear members and members-to-be, friends and guests. Before I officially open today's scientific program, allow me to share with you some pictures. This was Simber, an eager freshman, dissecting and studying models in the Gross Anatomy Lab. 2 weeks after the COVID-19 lockdown, here she is, taking her major exams after flying home to Negros Occidental. Take time to read her message. And this is Simber now at her third-year level, studying online. When asked how she was coping, determined to make it, Doc, that's what she answered. It is because of students like Simber that you and the PSAi are here. Mark your calendars. November 30, 2020, you were part of the first ever virtual convention held in the history of PSAi. We are here because there is a solid commitment to deliver and advance in our methods of teaching. Some are wanting to learn new approaches, while others are seeking to reinvent whatever resources are available. What is constant in binding, however, is that we are here because we have the responsibility to teach the core science of anatomy to our future health professionals. During this period of pandemic and paradigm shift in our education, the Scientific Committee has prepared for you a series of topics which aim to help you adapt as anatomy professors. We have invited experts who may catapult you into innovating or reinventing your teaching methods. Hence the theme, Teaching Anatomy During These Extraordinary Times. We encourage everyone to stay and witness the first virtual induction of 16 fellows and more than 40 new members coming from Ilocos down to Davao. To get your e-certificates, just accomplish the evaluation tool to be emailed to you by our technical group. Your deans will also receive certificates to recognize your school's participation. All PSAi members, old and new, are strongly encouraged to take the Comelec Pulse, which will run until 10 a.m. The link will be flashed on your screens from time to time. Attend the business meeting, which will be held after the convention. And of course, to maintain your good standing, kindly settle your annual membership dues until December 8, 2020. Having said that, the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated Executive Council 2020, headed by our President Dr. Albert G. Hironella, is now officially opening the 38th PSAi Virtual Annual Convention. Welcome everyone and kudos!
So to introduce our first speaker for the Dr. Domingo Ampil Memorial Lecture. She is the Dean of the College of Medicine and Allied Medical Professions of the La Consolacion University, Philippines. May we call on Dr. Maria Cristina Zulueta.
Dr. Domingo Ampil is the first president of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. These extraordinary times may have placed us all on quarantine, but it gave us the time to reconnect with our family and friends. From a simple objective of gaining new members and reconnecting with old members, we want to go back and pay tribute to academicians and doctors who helped and contributed much in establishing the Philippine Society of Anatomists, leading us to having this first Dr. Domingo de Guzman Ampil Memorial Lecture. It is indeed an honor to present our first Dr. Domingo Ampil Memorial Lecturer. Dr. Nimelfa Utagana is a familiar face in medical education. He is an eloquent speaker and a great leader in medical and health professions education. He has equipped many doctors in the academe, and I have been truly blessed to be one of his students in the Masters of Science in Public Health program of the University of the East Ramon Magsaysay Memorial Medical Center Graduate School. To walk you through his vast experience and recognition as an educator and leader in the academe, I enjoin you to watch this presentation.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on the occasion of the Philippine Society of Anatomists virtual convention. Allow me to thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference. In today's topic, I will talk about how to maximize available online resources to effectively teach anatomy. Of course, this is in relation to your organizational theme, which is teaching anatomy in this extraordinary time. So let us now proceed with the presentation. I have organized the presentation into three major topics. We will discuss first an overview of online learning and remote learning so that we can more or less situate ourselves in the current context. Then we move to the major topic, which is utilizing online resources. And I will close my presentation with a quick or a short discussion of online assessment. We cannot talk about effective teaching if we are not able to measure outcomes of our own teaching. So let us now proceed to the first topic, which is the overview of online learning and remote learning. And our first discussion point is changing perspectives in teaching and learning. Before moving into maximizing available online resources to effectively teach anatomy, let us first go through some major pedagogical shifts that medical education went through and is going through at this particular moment. Of course, for more than 100 years, perhaps, we have been teaching anatomy and all other subjects traditionally. But with the coming in of information and communication technology, also came in blended learning, which is a combination of both face-to-face and online learning. And just recently, just actually a few months ago, or less than a year, because of the pandemic, we are forced to use remote learning. Let us just go a little bit, do a little bit of a review of all these approaches or pedagogical shifts. So we have traditional, and we all went through that probably. Even the newer graduates or new faculty members, we still remember. I still remember personally when I was doing cadaveric dissections, and although some prosections and use of models, and I do remember my teachers in anatomy who are very good in making drawings of anatomical structures, using only colored chalk. They will basically draw the anatomical structure from one end of the blackboard to the other end of the blackboard. And unfortunately, since we don't have digital camera during the time, you just really have to follow the drawings if you can catch up. And unfortunately, if you are not able to catch up, your faculty member will be erasing the portion that is done and to start another layer of drawings. And we can say that the traditional method is basically teacher-oriented more than student-oriented. And as I said earlier, the mainstays, the cadaveric dissections and assessment, therefore would also utilize both cadaver and models. And all of these are done in face-to-face and in laboratories. But the thing is, even before blended learning or even before the pandemic, there are already observations that the teaching of anatomy is facing a major challenge. One major challenge is that it's been reduced, or the time allotted for anatomy has been reduced, and therefore providing very little opportunity for learning really anatomy using cadavers, because you have to reduce time, and therefore one of the things that you need to sacrifice will be the actual cadaveric dissection. So what you will do is do a pro-section or pre-dissected cadavers and use some plasticized models. The reduction of time in anatomy is due to the fact that there are other new courses being introduced, and you have to look for some time. You have to look for time for it, and one of the probably first thing they will look for will be in anatomy and the first year subjects, and that's it. You reduce the time. And then, of course, you have now the blended learning. As I said earlier, it's brought about by changes in information communication technology, where students have now more access to digital materials. But the thing with blended learning is that you really plan it from the very beginning. Meaning, when you develop your anatomy course, for example, you already know that it will be in blended mode, and therefore it will be delivered with the ratio by at least 60-40 or 60 online, 40 face-to-face, or the reverse. And since you already want to do a blended learning from the very beginning, you already also would have probably developed your learning management system, where you will be able to manage all the resources, the digital resources, and at the same time still be able to do online and face-to-face. And with the blended learning, you actually, as I said, plan it very well. You have already embedded in your design the utilization of innovations or innovative teaching methods like flipped classroom, team-based learning, computer-based learning, or case-based learning. And in most of these approaches, lectures are reduced. And more often, during the face-to-face session, that's where students would answer critical thinking questions, and the rest of the knowing is home-based, but the doing is basically classroom-based. And as I said, recently we've been pushed to utilize what is termed remote learning. The problem with remote learning is that since it was pushed rather quickly because of the pandemic, courses are not technically designed to be delivered in remote. So what really happened is that your traditional course is just being delivered differently, and therefore it will be delivered in a remote setting. And since you're just changing the environment for the delivery, most of the teaching methods are still traditional. So you still have all lecture-based. So while students will be self-directed, learning on their own because of the absence of cadaveric dissections, but most of the lectures are pre-recorded and accessed online. So it's pretty much like the same 1 hour, except that you listen to 1 hour's lecture in classroom, but this time you listen to it online. The rest is almost similar. It's almost like a traditional teaching, but delivered in a remote setting, which is different from blended. And since because it's remote, everything will be online, then you will have a major issue of absence of cadaveric dissection, which is still the major or the most important, what do you call it, experiential learning opportunity for students to learn anatomy. So these are the three pedagogical shifts that has been going on in relation to teaching not only anatomy but also medicine. But we need to also consider that there have been changes in the way we should be perceiving ourselves, or there should be changes in the way we look at ourselves as educator. Because of the new modalities and new characteristic of learners, we are to change into, as they say, to be more effective for 21st century, we need to change into learning coaches. Meaning, instead of delivering, we will be encouraging students to interact with knowledge, to understand and to critique, to manipulate and transform. And will that be also okay in anatomy? Of course. So, while there are shifts in pedagogical approaches, there are also shifts in our role. And one of that, as I said previously in the previous slide, is about coaching, but now we're also talking about being away from imparting knowledge, but more towards guiding, discussing, and measuring the progress of learners. So our teacher's role will evolve from being dispenser of information and knowledge to facilitators and enablers of learning, irrespective of the subject that you teach, be it anatomy, be it physiology, or internal medicine, whatever. And if we are to meet the needs of our digital learners, what we have now, we must not only develop what they know, but also how they know. So the challenge for us, therefore, is not now, as I said, not only to deliver, but basically to make learning more effective. So actually, I'm proposing a new title for the presentation as I move to this section: maximizing available online resources for the students to effectively learn anatomy. So it is not just about shifting to remote, but also shifting in our role. It comes with the territory. When you move to remote learning, then you have to let go of some of your pedagogical issues. When you go to remote learning, you also shift from being providers of information to facilitators of learning. And here, the challenge, therefore, when we move to the next topic is it about teaching anatomy? Or how do we make sure that as faculty members, we're able to facilitate students' learning of anatomy? And how do we do that? Let us now move to utilizing online resources. But before you proceed to utilizing online resources, you probably need to answer a central question. What materials will my course require? And this question should be answered based on the objectives or the intended learning outcome of your course, and availability of media, and students' experience in the use of the material that you will be utilizing. Or the way we formulate our outcomes follow the taxonomy of Bloom's, where you have the cognitive dimension. You go up from remember, understand, apply, analyze, create. And of course, the knowledge dimension, where you have 4 major knowledge dimensions that will be procedure, fact, metacognition, and concepts. And when we talk about our own intended learning outcome for anatomy, I am sure you don't just want them to go into that remembering a particular anatomical structure or understanding it, but hopefully you're able to elevate it to the higher level of cognitive dimension from lower order thinking skill, which is remember, understand, and apply, to more or less provide them with the opportunity to analyze or even evaluate. I was talking to Dr. Hironilia, and we were talking about vertical and horizontal integration, and that would mean basically moving from the remember upwards, so expanding the content horizontally and vertically. And one way to appreciate it is to follow this particular matrix for the cognitive and knowledge dimension. When you talk, for example, of anatomy forward, backwards, so as we design in outcome-based education, we always talk anatomy in the context of how it will be used in the future in clinical practice. So let's say, for example, in this scenario, you have create probably a management plan. Of course, we will not do that in anatomy, but as we go backwards, we know that to be able to perform the higher order thinking skill, you need to remember very basic information, very basic knowledge. So you have, for example, cardiovascular, let's say cardiovascular system. You have factual knowledge, you have conceptual knowledge, you have procedural knowledge. So you have integrating the whole cardiovascular system, not only along the cognitive dimension or upwards here or up to the horizontal plane or the row-wise, the cognitive process dimension. Why is it important to do that? Because when you, for example, look into this as an intended learning outcome and also look at it in the context of, say, strategies, if we are to go back to this again, you know, for example, that if you are to look into remember, then there will be different teaching learning strategies here if you want. So probably they remember concepts, they remember facts, that will be the anatomy of cardiovascular system, but they can also learn or remember procedures, because you might want to integrate within your anatomy some basic clinical skills like taking BP or even reading, for example, let's say ECG, or relating your anatomy to CT scan or ultrasound results. So from there you move forward to understand, and you know that as you move to this direction, your approach or your use of resources will be different, because while in this remember, you just want them to recall all what they have been learning from your online lecture or from other videos or from 3D digital materials. But if you are integrating horizontally, then they need to also analyze or apply. Say they can perform procedural activities like take BP from real patients or from people in the community and analyze that particular result and probably even determine the status of patient's blood pressure. Is it, let's say, are they hypertensive? Are they suffering from a cardiovascular problem? Probably you say it's too early, but you can already integrate that in your anatomy. And why it matters? Because, as I said earlier, we are shifting our role from delivering knowledge to facilitating their utilization of the knowledge that are made available to them through different pathways or different online resources. And it's also important that the students, especially now on their own, will have to take care of the metacognitive knowledge. That would mean we should be able to provide students opportunity to monitor their own learning. And that's the thing that is happening here in remote. we cannot always be with them, or we cannot be with them to evaluate their skills or their knowledge. They have to evaluate it themselves. And that's what we call metacognitive knowledge. So if you know what you need to know, then you can also apply it to yourself, meaning if I know that these are the anatomical structures, then if I am not able to identify those, then I recognize that I have some limitations in remembering this content. And if I know that I have these limitations, then I should be able to do my own remediation, apply remediation measures. So therefore, in utilizing your materials, you should provide that opportunity for them to metacognitively assess their performance. And from the result of their own self-assessment, they should be able to develop their own intervention, not necessarily your intervention. And that's the thing, that we are to, if we are to be more effective in this remote learning thing, then we have to equip our students to be self-evaluators. And therefore, your resources, the resources that you will introduce, will have to have in one way or another some elements of that kind of instructional event. Okay. Now, learning, if we are to go back to Gagne's 9 general steps of instruction for learning, they have to go through at least nine stages. They have to gain your attention, describe the goal. You have to stimulate them to recall, and before you even present the materials to them, and then you provide guidance for learning. You elicit performance practice, provide informative feedback, and assess, and of course, enhance retention of transfer. How do we do all this? So, let me now utilize this Gagne's 9 general steps of instruction for learning to look into the way we should be facilitating or to ensure effective learning of anatomy. So let's say you have all these materials, you have your virtual 3D models, you have your online video lectures, you have interactive anatomy, you have virtual textbooks, or what other available materials that are provided to them. To make sure that you are effective in facilitating the learning process, then you have first to make sure that you gain student attention. And to gain your student attention, that would mean, or if you are able to get the attention of the students, then you have the better chance of better perception or learning. Better learning will happen. So, whatever material you use, whatever online or digital resources you will deploy, make sure that you make students curious about the materials. Relate the material to outcomes and relate materials to practice. We're discussing about horizontal and vertical integration, and of course, provide teasers. So you don't just tell them watch a video. Introduce them to the course, to the content area. Why do you need to watch this? Why do you need to interact with this particular object? Make them curious. Make them motivated. Make them appreciate that this material is related to their future task as a physician. So therefore, it is also important that aside from making them realize that this course is important or these materials are important, it is also incumbent upon you to provide them with all the goals. You need to tell them where are they going. We say, where are we going with this particular material? So you do not limit to enumerating specific session outcomes, but also relate again the importance of what they learn to their future practice. You can even ask students their personal goal for the course, the topic sessions. So instead of giving them lectures right away, you can actually ask them what do they intend to learn in this module. You don't just give your own listed objectives. Why not ask them what they intend to learn? Because in that way we know exactly their motivation, and intrinsic motivation is a more important factor in learning than extrinsic motivation, or like because there will be regular exams. That's not really a very effective way of ensuring learning. So after you have described, then you stimulate. So before even you start asking your student to view materials digitally or digital materials online, you need to stimulate. You need to test, recall, or prior knowledge. So they call it, for example, pre-test or whatever term you will use, so that you will have to but basically you have to remember that students are not coming in anatomy tabula rasa. A lot of them are pre-med students. Some of them took biology. Some probably are nursing students before, or registered nurses, medtech, and sort of thing. They know about anatomy. So why start with giving a lecture? Why not start with running a simple case scenario that would help them recall or remember any prior knowledge? So for example, if you're using a YouTube video, you can link it to Edpuzzle. I will show that to you later, so that you can ask required questions before viewing, meaning before they proceed with the viewing of your own lecture or your YouTube videos. You can already ask open-ended questions, so that they will be able to more or less stimulate what is already or what are already available in their long-term memory. And after you've done that, that's the time you already to go to the presentation. So if you're using a learning management system like Moodle, Canvas, or Blackboard, you can start by, or you can hide the rest of the lectures and only make it available to them after they have answered short questions or short case studies, vignettes. We call it the access restriction, so that you can measure them prior to the delivery of, or prior to the presentation of information. So once you've done that, then you present the materials to be learned. But before you present, you need to test the materials. Testing materials would mean looking into all this. For example, if you have several materials available to you online, then you need to test the materials. Are they appropriate for your own intended learning outcomes, or you're better off doing your own? So don't just deploy your YouTube videos without reviewing them. Actually, it's like before you're doing your carousel of slides without reviewing it, and by the time you actually presented it, you realize they are inverted, they are different content, sort of thing. So the same way here, we need to also review our materials. We have to test if they are appropriate for you. Okay. So when you present, you can either launch your own YouTube channel or curate online videos and other resources using your own LMS. Like if your school is not a subscriber of any learning management system, on your own you can actually use Google Classroom or even do Google Site. If you're a lover of Microsoft, then you can probably use Microsoft Wix or other blogging sites. As I said, you can either prepare your own material, you search material, but you need to curate the material and deploy them via LMS. So present only the materials after the first 3 steps have been done or introduced, as I said earlier. Additional learning resources to use, you can use virtual 3D materials online video lectures, interactive anatomy, digital handouts, which are of course delivered synchronously or asynchronously. So let me, for example, now show you how you can develop your own learning management system using both Google Site and Microsoft Wix. Okay? If you don't have a learning management system in your school and you want to deploy or curate your learning materials in anatomy, organize it in such a way that this follows the curricular or instructional design that you prepared, you can actually use Google Site to develop one. So let's say, for example, I created an anatomy online, so it will have the modules and sort of thing, very easy to do. So you can review and your site. So let's say, for example, this is anatomy. Then I can have about this size. Then I can go modules, for example. Then have overview, or it will provide link to videos, or I can go back to cardiovascular system. In this particular module, you will add other items. So you can also do self-assessment, and in the self-assessment, you can probably add your Google form or some other link to some other evaluation online assessment protocol that you may develop. Okay, and this is an example of developing your learning management system using Wix. So this is a free software or free web building site or owned by Microsoft. So, for example, I also created something like this. It's anatomy, and you have all the menus here to add. It's very easy to do actually, and you can just say preview it, and you have this anatomy course. Then you can have course organization, home, about, self-assessment, and more. So you can add more materials. So here is Wix. Insert the video here. According to a 2020 article, the role of technology in anatomy teaching, they found out that students, at least in this particular study, 35% of students are using applications to learn anatomy, 52.9% use books, 56.9% cadaveric teaching, so basically it's already been reduced. 34.3% dissection. When I say here cadaveric teaching, it's actually prosections where cadavers are already pre-dissected. And you notice there are already reduction in the dissection or the percentage of the dissection, no? In terms of learning anatomy. Lectures still 52.9% and online videos 51%. So there is a major shift in the use of learning materials. After the presentation, you need to now provide guidance for learning. This probably will be the most challenging step in a remote learning setting. In any setting, you are encouraged to use innovative learning strategies because research have shown that when students are using or engage actively in the learning process, then it encourages more creativity, provides more peer-to-peer interactions, and a more active and memorable way of learning. It also makes the learning environment more relaxed, and therefore it helps in long-term memory and therefore retention. After you have elicited the performance, of course, you may want to present the product of this interactivity in so many forms. Or actually, you can help them engage in so many innovative techniques, engaging techniques, even to the use of artwork, literary work, or photo and video projects. So you can do probably art competitions, or even body painting, or t-shirt printing or painting, or if you have enough resources, even 3D printing, maybe later, maybe in the future, if 3D printer will be cheaper enough for the students to purchase, then we can already encourage, instead of the dissection, instead developing a 3D printout of anatomical structures. And after everything, of course, going to number 7, we provide informative feedback. That would mean more formative, probably online examinations. I don't expect you to regularly meet them, but if you have time, why not? But why not encourage peer-to-peer discussions where they do their own critiquing, the way we used to do it in medical school, when we ask a classmate to ask you questions, and in turn you ask your classmate another question. And that basically, that peer interaction would encourage more quality learning, provide more intrinsic challenges, and therefore hopefully better retention, again, better recall. And why not incorporate flipped classroom and team-based strategies in your design? Because flipped classroom and team-based learning will always have, as part of their synchronous session, application of knowledge and using interactive strategies. Okay? And 8, you of course use assessment, online assessment. In one session in UP a month or 2 ago, I was asked to lecture on how do we address cheating in online examinations. I was telling them, cheating will always be there, and students are only cheating probably because of the penalty that they may get out of the difficult exam questions. So what the thing is, probably give regular shorter examinations, make your examination moderate in difficulty, relevant to your students, and do more formative and graded exam. And just do a long exam at the end, because the formative exam is more useful in development of metacognitive skills and self-assessment. Or you can also use, say, games, gamify your examinations. So we'll have no opportunity for that here, but probably in the open forum we can talk about how do you add games or use gamify software in testing, so that you can have more active and more engaging examinations. And the last, of course, will be enhancing retention and transfer. That will be providing with opportunity for revisitation of materials. That's the good thing with remote learning, and if you have a learning management system, materials will always be available 24/7, and if the students want to revisit, all they need to do is click the link to the previous course or previous material, and then they can do the revisitation. Another way is to use application questions. Make the recall of material more significant, more deep, and more, applied to their future clinical practice. And why not use progress examinations? Examinations that cover all items in the subject, maybe the one semester subject. Give examinations that will cover all the semester subjects, taken or not taken. Why? Because students will be given the option to answer questions that they know and leave questions that they have not taken. But the more subjects they have taken, or the more topics that they have taken, then you should be able to monitor progress in scores. So if they're not progressing, then chances are students are temporarily parking the knowledge in one topic to concentrate on another topic, and that's not good. Okay? So this is how you utilize Gagne's steps in instruction and teaching, so that you will be able to so that your students will be able to properly use the materials and also reduce your teaching part, but and increase your facilitating part. So therefore, students will now have a reverse. The students, instead of listening, will become more active participants in the learning process. So we have finished utilizing online resources. Our last topic will be on online assessment. Just maybe 2 or 3 minutes on this, okay? In terms of assessment, one exciting or interesting online application is Edpuzzle. It's interesting because what you can do with it. Edpuzzle is that you can get a YouTube video and then edit the video to incorporate examinations. So for example, if you edit this video, the structure of the heart, then you can put open-ended questions. Here, for example, at this particular point, when the student reaches this particular part of the video, then it will ask a question: what are the four chambers of the heart? And then the students will have to answer before they can continue watching. And immediately once they answer this particular question, you will receive an email containing the response. So it's real time. I cannot just tell you that they watched the online lecture. You know that they watched because you received a note or an email confirming that they watched that video and answered a particular question related to the video. Again, we covered 3 major topics: overview of online learning and remote learning, followed by our discussion of how to maximize online resources, and third, how to do online assessment, although just a little bit. And again, my big thanks to the organizer, to the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated, for inviting me to participate in this virtual conference. I hope I was able to impart some knowledge. I know you have been doing anatomy for the longest time and probably know more what to do to further improve anatomy. But to me, there's only one thing: as we move to remote learning, we should not only look towards improving our own teaching, but most especially making sure that the students are also metacognitively developed in relation to assessing their own knowledge and making individual interventions to further improve their knowledge. As I said in the beginning, while we initially would like to make ourselves better teachers in anatomy, but at the end of the day, the most important still would be the students getting better and better as learners. Good day. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Pahutagana, for that wonderful lecture. Please reserve your questions for our Q&A after the 3 topics. Type it in the Q&A chat box. And now, to introduce our second speaker, he is a faculty of the Human Structural Biology, FEU-NRMF, Institute of Medicine, and a faculty of New Era College of Medicine. May we call Dr. Norman V. Valera.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first Philippine Society of Anatomists virtual convention. Today, the Executive Council of PSAi prepared a very exciting topics which are very current and relevant to our present situation. So just sit back and hoping that you will stay with us till the end, because there are so much in store for you. It is with great honor and privilege that I will be introducing our first speaker of the day. Our first speaker is an Apple Distinguished Educator and a member of its Global Advisory Board from 2015 to 2017. He graduated summa cum laude both in Masters in Nursing major in clinical instruction, and doctoral degree in development studies, major in educational development from Our Lady of Fatima University and the Royal and Pontifical University of Santo Tomas, respectively. In 2011, he was chosen by the Rotary International as one of the Philippine Ambassadors of Goodwill for District Group Study Exchange in Japan. He is also the first Asian to win Nurse in the Limelight Innovator Award for his telehealth in community project of seniors. He is the first non-American scholar of a highly competitive global emerging nurse faculty leadership academy of Sigma and Chamberlain University in Indianapolis, Indiana. An Excellence Awardee of University of Santo Tomas Graduate School for its Alumni Homecoming 2019. A Gawad Vicente M. Santos Awardee for Leadership in 2019, and the Emerging Nurse Researcher Honoree of Sigma's 30th Nursing Research Congress held in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, last July 2019, the first Filipino to receive such recognition from Sigma. He was also awarded by the provincial government of Bulacan as the 2019 Gintong Kabataan Awardee under the Professional Worker category under Proclamation 139-2019, and recently one of the Global Nurse Leadership Institute Academy Scholars for International Council of Nurses for 2020. At present, he teaches various research courses in his affiliation and functions as an academic consultant for informatics, outcome-based education, simulation, and research in various disciplines. He was invited speaker on various local and international events of different organizations within and outside nursing, including PACU. As a researcher and development scientist, he has published numerous research papers in high-impact international journals on education, nursing, and constructive integration of technology in teaching and learning. At present, he is the director of the Research Development and Innovation Center of the Our Lady of Fatima University and president-elect of the Pi Gamma chapter of Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society in Nursing. He is pursuing his second PhD at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen,
A pleasant day to everyone, and I hope that everybody's safe and healthy wherever you are. My appreciation to the organizers of this event, the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated, headed by the President, Dr. Albert Hironella. Thank you for the invitation. And our journey so far is really incredible. This pandemic is really challenging us to be more resilient but innovative. In the next few minutes, we will be exploring the concept tagged as the fundemic, which runs parallel to the title of my presentation: Fundamentals of Academic Teaching and Learning in Anatomy in Challenging Times. Sometimes we are pressed with so many challenges nowadays that we fail to recognize that the possible solution to our current educational challenges lies on the deep dive to some of the fundamental concepts in teaching and learning. In the Philippines, this is under the concept of outcomes-based education. I'm Professor Dr. Michael Joseph Dino. I'm a nurse by profession, but I started my career as an educator at the College of Nursing of the Our Lady of Fatima University in 2005. So I remember those times when we were starting to build up our new virtual laboratory and initiating the use of human patient simulators. And as academicians, we have noble responsibility in ensuring quality in teaching and learning. We prepare lessons, assessments, and ensure that our tools are working. Ever since I started my career in the academe, I look for ways on how I can be a better teacher to my students. After several semesters, I realized that the best teachers are those who make students fall in love with the course. Our ultimate goal is to make them inclined with the subjects that we are teaching, just like anatomy. Dash the hashtags, minahal, nagmahal, nag-aral. And for us teachers, technology is our best friend and make our students more hooked to the course. We play with our edtech tools. We make them feel amazed and realize that teaching with technology is better than the traditional mode. During in-person classes, we show concerns by giving them support activities and, of course, to make learning more concrete. Teachers are social butterflies, and we are in-person dynamics. We are charismatic, and we do have good interpersonal networking skills with our learners. Being with Apple for almost 5 years, I have learned to blend and juxtapose three important roles as a healthcare provider, as an educator, and as a researcher. As a proud member of its advisory board for health and medicine, I have collaborated with a lot of educators worldwide to further education, research, and health technologies. That includes wearable technologies like the Apple Watch and tracking of vital health statistics and activities of daily living from young to senior patients. At Apple, we develop tools and technologies for teaching in the healthcare sciences. And I remember the time when we collaborated with medical doctors in various countries to develop and evaluate learning materials for medicine, specifically in anatomy. However, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, everything changes. So our usual in-person classes are replaced by virtual rooms, networking sites, and learning management systems. Most of us were caught off guard by recent events, and we never expect that the challenges will come. So the in-person sessions are replaced by virtual environment. But of course, as healthcare providers, we know the value of TLC, or the tender, loving care. So for our doctors who are, of course, in the front lines, okay, TLC might mean time, love, and commitment. However, for those who are in universities and higher education institutions, TLC would mean teaching, learning, and communication. So right now, we are pressed with so many questions and deviating from the usual norms of conducting teaching and learning. So we are pressed with the questions: what to study, who to study, where to study, and when to study. One of the key concepts that I want everyone to remember is that learning is an experience. And according to Albert Mercer, learning is more concretized if we infuse joy and pleasure. This was supported with a lot of literatures in healthcare education for adult learning, or andragogy, where students learn faster and retention is longer if we involve fun. Adults are lifelong learners, and we are also life navigators. It's clever to note that education nowadays are venturing into uncharted waters. And these are some of the objectives that I would like to accomplish at the end of my presentation. So this is the fundamentals of academic teaching and learning, anatomy in challenging times. So in the next few minutes, we are going to explore the answers to the questions: what characterizes fundamentals of teaching and learning design? How can educators navigate teaching in virtual spaces? And how can educators keep learners engaged through the use of course, technology? This presentation was also inspired by two of my highly cited publications, which dealt with education and scholarship in the fourth industrial revolution, and the article on humanoid robots and fourth industrial revolution, where I asked the questions: what to teach, how to teach, where and when to teach. I know a lot of you are teaching in anatomy are mostly familiar with learning management systems. So in our institution, we are lucky to have integrated Canvas and LMS 3 years ago. We already explored Canvas prior to the pandemic and is maximizing its benefits today. Our collaboration with Instructure, producers of Canvas, has generated a lot of interesting ideas for remote and independent learning. We're also proud to produce a lot of studies in LMS in higher education, and one of the publications was presented in an international event, CanvasCon, which was held in Sydney last year. And we emerged as the first Filipino to showcase ideas on how to integrate LMS in medical education. The current pandemic produced a lot of shifts in the way we practice medical education. Most, if not all, of the medical schools in the Philippines are urged to reformat their courses. But as educators, we must acknowledge that there's no one best way to redesign and deliver a course. Given a context-relative approach, there are many ways or valid ways to teach and learn. And the key is to achieve fit, which means we need to recalibrate curriculum based on the needs of our specific students and based on the requirements of governing bodies. We need to juxtapose these two requirements. Firstly, there are important considerations in designing online learning environments. So in my 15 years of experience in the academe, there are four must-knows in instructional design and prepare for a more impactful course delivery virtually or online. So first is know your learners. A simple diagnosis of students' characteristic in terms of age, gender, and their preferences is useful. And studies showed that female students, for example, are more likely to complete an online course, while male students require guidance in some course tasks. Second is knowing your course. It is also a prerequisite, and this involves reviewing your course intended learning outcomes and its alignment with activities and assessment. Knowing your media entails an understanding of your plans with reference to your available media for the course and the capacity to build electronic learning resources in the manner on how you will deliver either synchronous or asynchronous modes. Knowing your resources is also useful, most especially in developing countries such as in the Philippines, where, of course, educators must have an idea on the technological literacy and capacity of their students to sustain online learning. We must recognize that some applications may not work for all of our students due to limitations in connectivity, gadgets, or other things. One of the best practices in this area is an example from Brunei, where they offer instruction based on student type and technology capacity. In our university, we conducted a lot of studies for us to know our students better, where we, of course, discovered the peculiar characteristic of our students. And just to cite an example, being also an educator in the graduate school, fits the resources that I present to my students based on their specific needs. Just like in this picture, where I'm teaching with for Chinese students. It is also important to maximize the technologies that are available. So we should know the features of the technologies, applications, or learning management systems that we are using in our university. And because of these technological requirements, so it's very much important that for the colleges of medicine, we develop what we call the college LMS or EdTech team that collaborates directly with our EdTech office. So as educators, we need to comply with what we call the technical and technical requirements. So when we say technical requirements, I'm talking about the minimum requirements as far as devices are concerned, which are presented on my slide. And when we say technical requirements, this refers to the attributes of faculty members teaching anatomy. So we need to be aware and competent in document processing software as a basic requirement. We need to have, of course, competence in developed learning materials. I know we are doctors and you are not destined only to teach, but of course to serve the community as medical doctors in our healthcare institutions. So as educators, you must be committed. You must be committed to monitor your students' progress. You need to communicate, of course, frequently, not only with your students, but with the online learning team. And one of the most important is we should show compassion or a sense of concern or care for our students. So in terms of the technical requirements, in terms of the internet requirements, we have conducted a study in our institution wherein we identified some of those online activities that actually eats up a lot of data. So highlighted in the slide are those activities that of course requires further consideration in terms of your data plans and of course the applications. So if we're going to estimate that, for example, for a student enrolled at a 3-unit course with 3 hours per week. So these are the requirements for their data. So one of the websites that I think is very much useful, wherein we can also check the speed of our internet connection, would be speedtest.net. Okay, so by using the speedtest.net, we can identify our download and upload speed. And based from experience for our students, they would need a minimum of 10 Mbps, and for educators, around 20 Mbps, because we are the ones who are sharing our slides or the applications that we are using on our iPads or devices. So for most educational institutions in the Philippines, so this would be the recommended approach based on research. So 70% must be allotted for independent learning, or what you call pedagogy, with the use of the different online learning tools, and only 30% for instructor presence. If previously you have 3 hours of lecture, so it's not wise for you to have 3 hours of lecture, because it will eat up a lot of data for your students. And in terms of the synchronous sessions, it will also, of course, decreases the attention span of your students. So this is very much challenging, because most of our students are not independent learners. So we need to teach them on how to be independent in terms of learning and studying the course modules that we develop for them. In online learning, one of the biggest challenges is how to make our students engage in the learning process. I think that's the number one problem. A lot of students are telling us that, of course, they are somewhat disengaged to some of the courses that they are enrolled in. And a lot of studies are teaching us that disengagements and dropouts are common to online courses. So to heighten student engagement, it is important for us educators to know its anatomy. And the secret formula for this is summarized in this slide. So based from a lot of theories in teaching and learning, student engagement has several dimensions, and it occurs at 3 levels. So behavioral, affective, and cognitive. So if we want our students to be more hooked to online learning, or in our course anatomy, we must master the arts and science of teaching in these 3 areas. Again, behavioral, affective, and cognitive. And I call it the hand, the heart, and the mind, from the usual philosophy, caput, core, and manus. First dimension is cognitive. We need to understand that the ultimate goal of online instruction is student learning, and students are more engaged in the course if they are actually learning from us. Therefore, it is important to provide maximum learning by stimulating their senses and doing constructive repetition. As the Chinese proverb would say, tell me I might forget, show me I might remember, and involve me and I understand. In whatever platform that we are using, we need to have something that a student should read, see, view, hear, or experience. Knowledge is more concrete if 2 or more senses are stimulated, and we call this principle teacher superiority effect. Teachers should also do constructive repetition by means of setting objectives, formative assessments, recall, synthesis, summary. Repetition equals retention, and my mom called it the Sharon Cuneta effect, or teachers must do repetitions hanggang ang himig natin educators ay maging himig na din ng ating mga students. In our university, as an example, we use a variety of tools to make our students read, see, hear, and experience learning. We develop videos, podcasts, and modules that are aligned with learning principles. However, we must ensure that we are introducing the right amount of information to our students. So this is how our modules looks like. And we also develop electronics or digital books, specifically for the College of Medicine. So we offer students, of course, instructional materials that can support or enhance their learning process using ebooks. And these are two of our first developed ebooks for the College of Medicine, the course in histology and, of course, in pathology. So we need to make technology seamless to our students. So as much as possible, we make them user-friendly, wherein they once they're signed into a specific account, they can be signed into other accounts as well. And in our university, we do, of course, what you have the Canvas integration. And the contents of our Canvas is very much heterogeneous, meaning it really depends on the course on what applications are you going to integrate with your teaching and learning. But in our university, we call it the PDF Aura with the hashtag Umaura. So when we say PDF Aura, so in our learning management systems and in online learning, we are providing information in pages We also include discussion boards. We upload files on or handouts or modules to our students. We give them assignments that they need to accomplish within a week. We introduce them to websites that are very much useful in their learning. We also introduce review questions for them to assess if they are learning something uh, personally, and applications for experiential learning. So when developing online resources, we need to put ourselves on the shoes of our students, and we can ask ourselves, are the resources organized for independent learning? Are the content valid, reliable, and plagiarism free? Are the instructions and guide adequate? Does it look good, enticing, and well prepared? And of course, is it a value for money? However, we don't want our students to be overwhelmed. There is a right media for every intended learning outcome. Learning is not effective if we will just provide students with voluminous resources. We need something that are in the right amount but maximum quality, advancing the concept non multa sed multum, or not many but much, and quality over quantity. Another formula in engagement is behavioral. So teachers should ensure that students are involved and active in the learning process. We should develop online activities that will make them participate, not just listen to what we are saying. And remember, quality instruction places the students at the core and at the center stage. I call this concept front learners, or placing the learners at the forefront of teaching and learning activities. So these are some of the applications that I'm using, of course, uh, for my class. So we have Lobster. We also utilize the Pearson MyLab. These of Flipgrids are very useful, specifically in anatomy. And I also issue badges to my students whenever they accomplish a certain task. So I also need to communicate with my students to make them involved, because according to a recent study that we conducted, 71% are more likely to receive an outstanding evaluation for educators who are using regular announcement in their learning management systems. There are a variety of applications that we can use for our students to be active and not merely listening during synchronous sessions. I will share some of my favorites, and the first one is Mentimeter online application. And it is very easy to use, because just like, of course, your PowerPoint presentation, you just can create your PowerPoint or upload your existing ones. Well, and the most exciting about this is that you can integrate, of course, polls or interactive surveys while you are doing, of course, the presentation. And one of my most favorite is the word cloud. Okay, feature. So for example, here, I'm going to input, how will you describe nurses during the COVID-19 pandemic? And once you share that to your students during your Zoom sessions, so by downloading, of course, the QR code and giving them the URL, so when you present that, you can see, of course, your students' responses popping out of your screen. Another is the perusal application. So for collaborative article reviews required in, of course, for example, in anatomy and identifying some of the parts. So I will not do a walkthrough due to time constraints, but I hope you will, of course, discover the benefits of using the perusal app for group studies. Another dimension of engagement in online learning is what you call the affective aspect. In affective, teachers must always ensure that students have high interest in the course. So always need to infuse joy and excitement in our online activities. Teachers must not be flat and monotonous. We must be unpredictable in terms of what our students will expect from our teaching and learning methodology. So we should always surprise our students in a positive way and from a persona. And okay, so just like the examples that you have seen, we should always surprise our students. So from a personal example, I use the following approaches that are in line with the interests of my students. I do in-house demos. We explore 3D and virtual reality, especially in anatomy. And I even do TikTok just to show our students a proper way of placing electrodes in the chest of the patient. So they love it and they can easily grasp the concept. So based from the Holy Scriptures, tell a man the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Amen? Amen. Summarily, there are numerous ways to make our students engage in online teaching and learning. Strategies to see how we can find the appropriate and best fit to our students to fall in love, of course, with the subjects. So specifically in anatomy, I would like to share with you this particular slide. And this is the use of course, what you call the augmented reality and the virtual reality, just like, of course, what you have seen in the previous slides with the students wearing of course, you have your virtual glasses, okay, which they can purchase very cheap in Shopee, Lazada, etc. So I think that the cheapest would be 150. And for anatomy, this is one. Of course, one of the technologies that you can use. So you have, of course, augmented reality, where you can put the body parts, of course, floating on the screen while you are sharing your Zoom uh, presentations. So you can identify the parts, you can zoom in. There's of course sounds for this. For example, for the heart, you can maximize and focus on the areas that your students would like to highlight. So I'm very, of course, happy that in our university we are working now on what you call the augmented and virtual reality applications for medical courses. And we call it the Flex AR/VR, or the augmented and the virtual reality. So the idea behind this is that we want our students to be engaged in the lessons that they are enrolled in. So for example, in anatomy, so with the use of their own devices, for example, their iPads or their smartphones, so some anatomical models will pop up, or by using, of course, their VR glasses, they will be immersed in a laboratory where they can perform or view some of the tasks. So these technologies are actually in line with what we call the fourth industrial revolution. So if you would like to know more and explore the benefits of fourth industrial revolution during the pandemic, so you can visit this website, intelligencethatweforum.org, because I do believe that this time of the pandemic, this is the best time for us to also prepare for the education in the fourth industrial revolution. So talking about fourth industrial revolution, it talks about artificial intelligence that we can integrate, of course, to our instruction, and looking at Google. Of course, these are some of the things that are included in the fourth industrial revolution: the use of virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and just like now, right? So some of the healthcare institutions are using robots. So we are actually exploring that even before the pandemic. So the use of 3D printers are also very useful. So for example, you can 3D print uh, body parts here, where of course you can demonstrate to your students in virtual learning. And in terms of artificial intelligence, most of the time I'm using the application, the Amazon Alexa, okay, especially to gamify my classroom learning. And I actually have this in my pad to control my lighting, to control the aircon, to control the blinds. And I'm using all this also for classroom. Okay, example. Alexa, how many bones are there in the human body?
We are born with 270 bones, but some of these bones fuse together as we grow, leaving adults with 206 bones. By the way, I can learn your voice to improve your Alexa experience. Would you like to try it?
No, because I'm doing a lecture. Okay, and of course, you can have this gamification of teaching and learning, right? So you can ask the students, and after that, you can ask Alexa for that. And as educators, we must also consider that not all cool are effective. And we must, of course, prioritize pedagogy before technology. We are not using this because these are exciting, but we are using this because this will help us achieve our learning goals in anatomy and physiology. Okay, so giving back, of course, the concept that I presented to you a while ago, that the best teachers will make you fall in love with the course. And in the same context, I would like to advance that also the best teachers fall in love with teaching. One effective way to assess if you will be effective is to ask yourself several questions. Am I excited to teach? If the answer is yes, then you are prepared. Am I looking forward to my session with my students? And imagining myself as a parent, will I want my child to be under this teacher when he uses this strategy? And placing myself on the shoes of my students, will I learn from my teacher if I use this approach? Nagmahal, minahal, nagteach. So the core of my presentation can be summarized on the concept of caput, core, manus. For us to be able to engage our students, we must tickle their mind, we must tickle their heart or compassion, and we must tickle also their skills in performing some of the simple tasks. So also as educational leaders and educators in challenging times, being an effective educator entails a combination of caput, core, and manus. You have that idea, you have that passion in teaching, and you have that ability. Let me end my presentation by sharing to you one of my favorite adage from the novel Origin by Dan Brown. May our philosophies keep pace with our technologies, may our compassion keep pace with our powers, and may love, not fear, be the engine of change. Thank you very much to the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. I am Professor Dr. Michael Joseph Dino from Our Lady of Fatima University. And if you have questions, okay, so I am very eager to answer your queries. And you can also reach me through the following social networking sites. And I'm also maintaining a YouTube page known as the Dignified, where I am teaching some, of course, tools that can be used by teachers in the online learning environments. These are my references. Thank you very much.
And that's Dr. Michael Joseph Dino for you. How can one so young achieve so much? How to be you, Dr. MJ. So very inspiring talk, Dr. MJ. Thank you very much again. Okay, thank you very much. So we will proceed. We will proceed already with the third lecture, and to introduce our third speaker. She is a graduate of St. Louis University, an associate professor 3 of SLU School of Medicine for Anatomy, Pathology, and Microbiology, Parasitology. Friends, please help me welcome Dr. Christine P. Ayochok.
Go. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated First Virtual Annual Convention. I am Dr. Christine Ayochok, and I'm here to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Maria Salome Fernandez. Dr. Fernandez is a board-certified general surgeon. She is a fellow of the Philippine College of Surgeons. She is also a fellow of the Philippine Society of General Surgeons Metro Manila Chapter. She is a diplomate of the Philippine Board of Surgery. She is a fellow of the Philippine Society for the Surgery of Trauma. She is a member of the Association of Women Surgeons of the Philippines, and she is also a member of the Philippine Wound Care Society. Currently, she is an Assistant Professor 3 for the Department of Surgery, Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine, and for the Department of Human Structural Biology, Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine. She is an active consultant in the Department of Surgery, Fatima University Medical Center. She is a product of Fatima College of Medicine. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Dr. Maria Salome Fernandez.
Hello, I'm Dr. Fernandez, and today I'd like to show you how to make slide presentations that will make an impact and keep your audience engaged. With that, I want to share with you some tips and tricks to help you make easier more powerful, and better looking presentations than you used to. So let's get started. Have you attended a presentation, whether it be a lecture or a conference, where you found it difficult to keep yourself awake? Or probably you just simply dozed off unintentionally despite all your efforts not to. Or maybe you got bored, lost interest, and your mind just wandered off several miles away from where you are. When a teacher speaks in a monotonous voice, audience interest is bound to gradually escalate, causing them to start daydreaming, doodling, chatting, or texting. In short, the speaker loses his power once the audience decides to disengage. So how do we make an effective slide presentation? Let's start with the basics. Prepare your materials and practice. Remember, all presenters perform their best when they prepare and practice. A speaker's content and delivery can range from muddled to mesmerizing. Choose a simple design template, one that will be appropriate for your topic. Remember, simplicity is sophistication, and simple is elegant. Choose a color scheme. Choose colors that are pleasing to the eyes. Limit yourself to 4 colors. A monochromatic scheme is also a good idea. You can also use a monochromatic scheme with a certain pop of color. Choose the font. Prepare the images. For the font size, it should not be less than 25. Avoid italics because they're not very readable from afar. Avoid using more than 2 fonts. There are a lot of very good font types, but my favorite in the iPad is Thornbury in bold. Arial is also a good font. You can also use Gill Sans or Calibri, just to name a few. The key to success is to make certain your presentation is a visual aid and not a visual distraction. The most common mistake most lecturers make with slide presentations is trying to cover too much ground. The goal should be to give the right amount of information in the right order for your audience to understand and assimilate. For images, clear and unlabeled images are recommended. Make sure visuals or images are clear and of high quality. The size of the audience should also be considered when presenting on a face-to-face setup. But whatever the setup, whether the presentation is online or face-to-face, the same rule applies. The image should be visible to the entire audience. Use a consistent formatting for the images, one that gives the same look or feel. For example, mixing brightly colored images with a dominant black and white theme is not a very good idea. Royalty-free images are recommended. There are many websites that you can search for this. Png Images stand for Portable Network Graphics. This is a file format for digital art. It has the capacity to display images with transparent backgrounds. PNG images are very useful, especially pins with round heads and push pins for our purposes. I will show you how these images can be used in our anatomy lectures in my succeeding slides. Vectors, like arrowhead and roundhead vectors, are also very useful. Clear and unlabeled images are recommended. A photo editing app is a good thing to have for removing labels from images, such as this one, and also for improving the quality of pictures, as good ones do not always come free. So with a photo editor, you could even remove small lines, such as this one.
But what if I really like an image, but it's heavily labeled? There is a cost-saving option for removing labels from images using only tools that are integral to both PowerPoint and Keynote, which I want to share with you. So you can use shapes. Insert a shape from the Keynote or PowerPoint menu, which you think can adequately cover the labels. Fill the shape with the same color as your presentation background. Drag the shape to cover the labels. Remove the border of the shape. You can use as many shapes as you need until all the labels are no longer visible. This technique, however, will not be able to remove the label lines unless you use a photo editor with an erase function. But even with a few lines still visible, the image already looks decent and uncluttered. For PNG images, you can search for images with clear backgrounds. There are a lot in the web. You can find them pretty much anywhere in the internet. Now, this is a PNG image with a clear background. When you save it to your picture gallery, it's already ready to use at the outset. You can now resize it and pin to your image, or even use a transition with it. So for this one, I use the anvil transition for the pink pin. However, some PNG images do not have a clear background, such as this one. So to remove the background, all you have to do is click the image, click the brush tool, which will bring down or bring out a drop-down menu. Then click Instant Alpha. You will then see an instruction that says drag across colors to make transparent. Do a long tap on the background and this will bring out a circle. Without lifting your tap, drag the circle at the background area until a mint green shade appears and covers the entire background. Once you let go of the long tap, the image will no longer have the background. If you want to change the orientation of the image and make it lean to the other side, you can click the image again, click Brush, a drop-down menu will appear. Click Arrange. Another drop-down menu appears. Click Flip horizontally. So the pin now leans to the other side. You can now resize your pin accordingly. Another guideline is to be minimal. Don't crowd a slide. Use just the right amount of visuals. If a picture will not give added information and can cause the students' minds to wander off, then don't use it in your presentation. Now I will show you some powerless presentations that can become powerful and effective. So for this one, what are the flaws that you can see in this slide? There are too many images. The text overlaps pictures, so it looks cluttered. The station tube should be in another slide, not with the obstacles. So makeover of that slide is on the right side. So the second slide looks better and uncluttered.
So simplify and limit the number of words on each slide. Use key phrases. Include only essential information. Do you recognize the flaws in this slide? The topic being discussed is not visible in the image. The image is blurred and deformed. The contents are not in bullets, but in sentences and appears to have been copy-pasted from the textbook. Doing another makeover of the slide. So both slides contain the same information, but certainly the right one looks better and more appealing. What if an image or illustration that you really like or need for your presentation has several important structures or details in it that you wish to explain? An important point to keep in mind is this. One complicated slide, such as this one, takes the same amount of time to explain as 3 or more simpler slides. If a slide has too much information, it becomes too overwhelming, giving the audience the feeling that they have to read and listen at the same time. The presentation then loses its power to engage the audience any further. So, what should you do? Simplify. Divide the information into chunks that are easier to swallow. So this slide contains too much information. There are too many arrows, too cluttered, and too overwhelming. So another makeover of the slide. So from a slide that's too overwhelming, you divide the information into chunks, so the 2 slides on the right side are better looking and more engaging. Now we go to the use of vectors. Avoid using several vectors in a single slide. Don't conserve on the number of slides by putting everything in one slide. Look at this slide. Do you recognize the flaws in this slide? Too many crisscrossing vectors. Too many labels. Too overwhelming. A makeover. Comparing the left to the right slide, the one on the right is again more appealing and less confusing, but both slides contain the same information. What are the best vectors to use for images? Arrowhead vectors are recommended when pointing at very small structures or openings that can possibly get obscured if you use a roundhead vector. Make sure its tip just touches the pinpoint area. As you can see in the second picture, where a round head is used, the round head has completely covered the opening, so it's not recommended for very small structures. Round head vectors are recommended when you want to point to big cavities or structures. And line draw is the best animation for vectors. For this one, I use a transition called line draw with a duration of 0.20 to 0.30 seconds. Both arrowheads and roundhead vectors can be used for pointing at thin structures. However, for me, the roundhead would look better and less confusing. When pointing at a structure with another structure just parallel to it, using arrowhead vectors can sometimes be confusing, such as this one. So it's not clear or it's confusing if the arrow is pointing to the vein or the artery. If you must use an arrowhead, have its point just merely touching the structure that you want to point to. When pointing at structure with adjacent parallel structures next to it, there are better options. You can use a roundhead pointer ending within the structure. Or you can use pins or Png Images the way we use real pins in the laboratory. When pointing at large cavities, it's best to use roundhead pointer or roundhead pins. But the color of the pointer should make it distinct or should stand out. For vector animations, I use line animations. And for line animations, the best ones I could recommend is a line draw of 0.10 seconds or a line draw of 0.20 seconds or a wipe of 0.30 seconds. Don't make animations that take longer than 0.80 seconds. Here's a 1 second line draw. For animations, keep in mind that animations can cause a delay in slide transitions if the slide presentation is done online. Your slide may not be in sync with what the students are seeing. So to check on the synchronicity of your slide presentation or my slide presentation as presenter with that of the student's view, I log on to Google Meet or Zoom using 3 gadgets during synchronous learning: an iPad, a laptop, and an external monitor. Just to show you my setup, I use my iPad for slide presentation and the external monitor beside me to monitor students' view to know if there is a lag, and also to view the Q&A or chat box. Then I use my laptop for generating the Google Meet attendance. Here is a screenshot of the Google Meet grid view in one of the lectures that I had. I hope you find the tips and tricks I shared with you helpful the next time you make a slide presentation. So thank you everyone, be creative, enjoy, and have a beautiful day.
And to start, we have one question for Dr. Pahutaganan. Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Hello.
Hello po. Hello, sir. Sir, we have one question. Can you, sir, give us a tip or a technique on how our students can minimize the disadvantage of not feeling or seeing or maybe dissecting a real cadaver? Do you suggest, sir, using a 3D anatomy models that can be downloaded online?
Okay. So, first thing first, there are important debates going on in relation to cadaver dissection. So, if you go into either you go into cadaver dissection and of course you go cross sections, of course it would require time, and time that are used in dissection can also eat time in learning concepts, no? So at this particular point, while we are losing, for example, let's say dissection, we have to start focusing our attention on learning more the concepts and the anatomical structure without necessarily doing a dissection, because in relation to future competency requirement, the more important, at least some articles are saying that the more important competencies are actually in the area of, for example, relating surface anatomy to anatomical structures. So if you are in a general practice, you should probably more equipped with identifying or relating clinical informations or clinical observations to the external or to the surface anatomy. And that would not require dissection. But of course, to those who are planning to go into, let's say, surgery, dissection may be an important competency. But technically now globally, for example, I studied in Maastricht more than 20 years ago. When I was doing the master's at the University of Maastricht. And in that medical school, they don't have dissections. Dissections are not part of the regular course. Most of the things that are actually doing is basically to ask the anatomists, most of them surgeons, to perform already the dissections. So we call it prosections. So what the students are doing instead are going to the cadavers, but not do dissections, but spending most of their time learning the anatomical structures. Because to them, that is the more important competency requirement than the dissection. Because they're producing general practitioners. So in a way, that's a trade-off. But the other thing is, you can actually program your courses in like we had talked this out with, for example, Dr. Joe Cueto of PRC. They are discussing the delaying of a dissection in the future once they are made available. So in a more comprehensive development of your program in medicine, that would mean you cannot just restructure anatomy outside of the bigger medical course. That would mean if you really want your student to go back to dissection, if you really think that's an important competency for them, you see there's a different thing, huh? Competency for dissection and competency for knowing or identifying structures. Iba yun, ha? Iba yung competency requirement nun. What is bigger for you, the dissection competencies or the competency related to very good or 100% skill or knowledge in identifying those structures? So at that point, we can do that even without dissection. We can do all these 3Ds, we can do all of that. They can identify it. But if you really want to go to dissection, my take is the whole medical curriculum will have to embrace something. Meaning you allow yung iba pang subjects sa higher levels, or you track in a way na pagdating nilang ang COVID ay tapos na, that the course will allow a going back to dissection as part of the regular program. Parang ano na lang yan eh, parang parallel track in the future. But for the moment, kung talagang PSAi lang, knowledge in relation to all the facts and what others, then you can learn it without dissection. Yun ang take ko doon. But if you really want to really make them experience the whole thing, then ask the whole program to provide return back sessions. Maybe next year, maybe in the next year. Para tuloy-tuloy, ibigay mo pa rin, pero hindi ngayon. Kung talagang gusto mo, i-program mo. Kaya nga sabi ko, hindi pwedeng hiwalay ang anatomy sa diskusyon na to sa ibang buong medical education program. You really have to embed it somewhere within the next 3 years na sila estudyante. That's my take.
Very well noted, Doc. Thank you, Doc. Doc, we have another question here from Dr. Leandro Villa. A question for Dr. Pahutagan also. And according to Dr. Villa, nowadays those studying medicine come from different colleges like accountancy, business admin, etc. So long as they are from BS courses. How can we address this based on your statement a while ago that they are not starting from scratch?
Hi, Dr. Villa. So long time no here. So I think the thing is there's something that you may have not noticed. If you go earlier, even before the BS, there are major changes in K-12 education. Diba? I was telling my students in my postgraduate, when my kids were studying in elementary, grade 3 in the UP Integrated School, grade 3, grade 2, they were also already asked to do a 3D versions of their understanding of human anatomy. Sabi ko nga, anak, hindi ka naman nagna-nursing, grade 3 ka pa lang. Why are you being asked to develop your own version of a 3D anatomy? They even have several projects. Ibig sabihin, we're not just talking of the BS degrees. Actually, if you go down to the level of K-12, lower than the K-12 even, elementary, they're already using high level, at least basic level of anatomy, physiology. Kaya yung sinasabi ko, Dr. Villa, na from scratch is not only in college. The scratch is also including up to the elementary education level. Yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Doc. And Doctora Marisa Fernandez, can you hear us?
Yes, Doc. I can.
Hi, Doc.
Here.
Doc, we have one question, Doc. For the benefit of the students, making them more excited to see the presentation, do you recommend us using a lot of animations, a lot of moving pictures, as compared to a well-developed slide without animation? Because we know that during this online teaching, if you use a lot of animations, it will take up more memory, making the video bigger in terms of the file size, and this will affect, of course, when they play it online. What is your take on this, Doctora? Thank you.
Well, with regards to animations, first and foremost, you must be prudent in your choice of how much animation you're going to use. For purposes of our anatomy lectures, that I think if you need to point on an object, then good use of 1 or 2 line animations will do. For a single slide, if there are 2 areas that you would want to point out in your lecture, then you use line animations that are not pointing at the same time. So 1 at a time, and the best time allotment that you should give per animation should be less than 0.5 seconds, because if it will take you around 0.80 seconds for one single line animation, then it will be too time consuming, especially if you have to discuss a lot in one slide. Okay, so be very prudent in your choice of animation. As much as possible, limit only to the topic that you're discussing. If there's so many structures you would need to point using your animations, then it's better to have 3 or more slides for that particular topic.
Thank you so much, Doctora.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, and then Doc MJ, can you hear us?
Yes, Doc Wesson.
Doc MJ, we have here a question from Dr. Villa. Recording lectures is one way to address poor connectivities, especially after the recent cyclones. What is your take on making the video lectures be downloadable?
Okay, so thank you for that question, Dr. Villa. It's nice to hear from you again. So my take on recorded synchronous sessions would be it's acceptable practice in the academy, especially right now we are in third world or developing countries. So yeah, so in some of the cases, Murphy's law will kick in. Everything that might, of course, be troubled will be troubled. So my take with that would be, I'm okay with that. So as long as you upload the videos or the synchronous recorded sessions in a certain format or databases that are safe and secure for your students. So most of our faculty members are uploading their videos at YouTube, but I think I would recommend some other platforms wherein we can have it secured, no? And of course, to be available to our student. There are lots of open resource databases out there that actually upload a lot of lectures, but I think we need to consider what we call intellectual property. We need to be considerate on the intellectual property of those authors. And if we're going to upload a certain video or a certain synchronous session, make sure that the resources are well cited. So for me, I can upload at YouTube, but I would suggest that they can also upload at Vimeo because for me, it's more secured.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc MJ. And then I think...
There are so many questions
Yes.
for the three speakers, but I think most of them have been answered already by our speakers, by Dr. Nemuel, and Dr. MJ also answered most of his questions. There are so many comments there. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think we have to proceed to the next portion. Thank you very much for our three speakers. Thank you very much for accommodating the questions. So, and if the audience have more questions for you, as Dr. MJ said, they have contact details where you can you can contact them so that you might clarify some queries that you might have. Thank you very much again, Dr. Michael Dino, Dr. Nemuel Pautagana, and Dr. Marisa Fernandez. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so let us proceed to the next part. In spite of the unusual times, the Society has opened its doors to new members teaching in the College of Medicine, as well as in the Allied Health Sciences. We are happy to announce that we have increased our membership, and to present and induct the new members of the Philippine Society of Anatomists, may we call on the Chairman of the Philippine Board of Anatomists, Vice Chair of the Department of Anatomy of Our Lady of Fatima University, the Associate Dean of Our Lady of Fatima University College of Medicine, and is recently inducted as the Governor of the Central Luzon Chapter of the Philippine Medical Association, Dr. Jose Arnel Manalili.
A good day to everyone. May I request the inductees for membership to the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated to raise the right hand and follow after me. I do hereby swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion, and conscience the duties and responsibilities of a member of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. I will always regulate my conduct with the interests of the society in view and will remain true to its cause and objectives. I impose this obligation upon myself voluntarily, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations to all of you.
This early, we would like to congratulate the new fellows of the Society. Let us call back Dr. Jose Arnel Manalili to this time present and induct the new fellows.
Again, a good day to everyone. May I request the candidates for Fellow of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated to raise their right hand and follow after me. I do hereby swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion, and conscience the duties and responsibilities of a Fellow of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. I will always regulate my conduct with the interests of the society in view and will remain true to its cause and objectives. I impose this obligation upon myself voluntarily, without mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations to all of you, and Godspeed. Okay.
And to deliver the closing remarks, let us call the chair of the annual convention and the vice president of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated, Dr. Chona Araga.
We have now come to the end of the first virtual annual convention of the Philippine Society of Anatomists Incorporated. I would like to thank the whole team for creating this event. Thank you all participants for sharing your precious time with us. See you again next year, hopefully face to face. Have a nice day. Keep safe.
Thank you very much again for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Ramimi, for being with me in this one of extraordinary convention, virtual convention. My first time to host a virtual convention, actually.
But this is the first time that we will be holding our annual convention online or on a digital platform.
Yes.
And I believe it's
yes.
successful, considering that what is happening to us, but we're still here, you know? And we're still expanding our membership. And congratulations to
yes.
The June Fellows. I saw Dr. Norman Valera. Congratulations. I saw Dr. Rene Akende, and to all the others who are new fellows. Nakakaingit ang inyong mga pins at saka yung mga sashes ninyo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Hope to see you again in the mid-year convention. Stay safe. God bless.